So, as we said a minute ago, the story of Elijah begins with his announcement to Ahab that the famine would not end until the Lord said it would. The rain would not come back until the Lord said it would. And after that announcement, the immediate question was about survival, right? How is he going to survive this famine? What's he going to eat? What's he going to drink? Where's he going to live? It's about survival. And Elijah's statement, if you think about it, is really quite courageous. This program is called Living Courageously. And we see that Elijah is no chicken when it comes to standing up to somebody who needs to be stood up to. It's a clear call to the king that things aren't good. And yet the story is about survival. Things aren't good. How am I going to survive? So last week, he survived by being fed by ravens. And that seems pretty unbelievable, right? How many of us have that as a backup plan? Right? Oh, well, COVID's hit. I lost my job. Well, maybe the ravens will do the job. Maybe they'll drop some food at my doorstep for me. I wouldn't suggest that as your plan B. But for Elijah, he goes from that as his plan B to plan C. So I'm going to go from ravens, and if you didn't think that was possible, I'm going to be fed by a widow who's prepared to die. Her cupboard is so empty that she's gathering sticks to just put up shop and say, I'm going to call it a life and get out of this place. So Elijah's, tax for survival wouldn't be recommended, right? You wouldn't think that'd be the way to go. The idea of being fed by ravens, though, we talked about, what is that? It's about mixed motives. It's about fitting in, and, it's about a desire to be praised. It's about how we get along in this world. So our task has been about identifying spots like that. But this week we say, okay, well, that's not really working out for us because I'm not very satisfied, because I'm not getting the payback that I want, perhaps. So the new solution is this widow. And the spiritual famine, or the famine that's going on, is a depiction of our life where we are not yet regenerate. And I don't want to confuse this with being degenerate. This is not saying that we're necessarily a bad thing, but we haven't, finished the climb up the mountain. We're on the mountain, but we haven't made it to finish it up. So when the brook dries up, ravens disappear. It's telling us that what's going on so far in our life isn't working. It's not sustainable, right? Being fed by ravens in a brook in a famine just isn't sustainable. So while mixed motives may be part of our journey, we just can't stay there for long because it isn't satisfying. The Lord's telling us, all right, you can do this for a time, but eventually this is going to run out. You're going to be dissatisfied with your spiritual situation. You're going to look around at your life and going, this isn't fulfilling. I'm not fulfilled. I want to find that in life. And that's what I think a lot of people in life struggle with, is I want that sense of purpose, that sense of belonging, that sense of having something special in life. The Lord's saying mixed motives aren't going to cut it. But if you can change your ways a little bit and say, well, maybe if I serve the Lord first, things can work out. People experience this call towards something more all the time, But that call usually keeps referencing back towards tangible markers of success, right? We'd like to get a pay raise to say, where the company is saying, oh, you're doing a good job, so you should get more money. Here's a reward as a recognition that you're doing really well. How long could you go in your current employment without some sort of attaboy, attagirl, something like that, some sort of sign that progress is being achieved? It's hard. It's hard. And these are the kind of things that drive us for the most part. Some sort of fairly normal expectations. But the time comes where you get those things. where you got that new car, that new house, that new whatever, and you're still not satisfied. And we need to have a new model for our life is what it comes down to. Simply working for those things that we were doing before just isn't satisfying us. So with Elijah, what happens? He sends him to this widow in Zarephath. And this widow represents a new, if unlikely, way of sustaining our inner life. The idea, you're going to be fulfilled by ravens isn't likely, but a widow, even less likely. So why would he be sent to her for his salvation? Why would he be sent to her for survival? Well, she represents a quality. She represents a quality that will sustain you during a famine. And it will bring you into a better state than that of being fed by ravens. So when he goes to find her, well, let's take a look at the reading. Just so we did it with the kids on that video, but let's do the actual reading here so we get some of the details hammered out. So this is in your order of service, 1 Kings chapter 17. It says, sometime later, the brook dried up because there had been no rain in the land. Then the word of the Lord came to him. Go at once to Zarephath in the region of Sidon and stay there. I have directed a widow there to supply you with food. So he went to Zarephath, and when he came down to the town gate, the widow was there gathering sticks. He called to her and asked, would you bring me a little water in a jar so I may have a drink? And as she was going to get it, he called, and bring me, please, a piece of bread. All right, stop there for that, because those are the details I want to focus on. It says that by finding her at the gate gathering sticks, it's a sign that she is looking for something, right? She's trying to build her life on deeds. She's trying to create her fire, her love, out of these sticks. And that she's at the gate shows that she's searching within our minds. It's like it's a real search. And so she's got this desire to find happiness through doing deeds, but she's a widow. And the idea of her being a widow is that she's searching for a husband. She's searching for the man in her life. She's searching for the truth. That's what a husband and a man's going to signify. So she, as a woman, represents goodness, the idea to do good things, which is why she's gathering the sticks to make a fire. So she's going to make her love through actions. But she doesn't quite understand how to do the good life. She doesn't have the truth, the direction that she needs. So what's going to sustain us? Well, it's that desire, that longing for the truth, a longing for what is right, pictured by the missing of her husband. So Elijah comes to this woman at probably the most difficult moment of her life, right? In her hardship, what does he do? Does he comfort her? Does he give her a hug? Oh, hey, sweetie, let me feel better. No. He adds to her troubles, right? You've got food barely for 2. I want you to make that for 3. But in doing that, he says, this is going to solve all your problems. Right? He tells her, you're going to win on this deal. You're going to win on this deal. The widow and Elijah have very similar troubles, really. I mean, right? Elijah has no food, no water. His brook's dried up. His ravens are gone. Her food's run out. She doesn't expect to live. So both stand for the situation in our life when false ideas and mixed motives no longer seem worthwhile. They're left empty. They're left despairing. They have no satisfaction in life. So how is it she's going to pull this off? How is she going to solve all their problems? Well, one of the things that we're supposed to pick up in this life here is that what we do when we're in a state of despair, what we do when everything seems to be going wrong and we're sad and having a pity party for ourselves, what we do in these hard times, those are the most important decisions that we make. Right? That's when you're being tested. What you do when you're pushed to the end It's a true marker of where you are. Right? Throughout all of the scriptures, throughout all of what Swedenborg writes, every temptation, every trial, every test involves some sort of despair. Some sort of this is killing me. If you don't have that feeling, it's not a temptation. But a person who's being tested is put through anxious fears, which produce anxiety and despair because you're just not convinced of how the ending's going to go. You know? If you do something and you know how it's going to turn out, it's not very testing. If I go and do this, I say, oh, well, I know, this is going to hurt a little bit, but it's going to be okay. Not a test. It'll be okay. But for Elijah and this widow, do they know how this is going to go? Well, I think Elijah's got more faith. Maybe not so much a test for him, but certainly is a test for her. Because you don't have that sense of victory. So the woman is in this anxious fear for her life. There's no solution. There's no solution. It's real struggle and real hardship. So Elijah's rather odd request and the promise that goes with it changes everything, doesn't it? Don't eat the last food yourself. Give some to me first. Whew. But then he says, do not fear. All right, let's pick up the reading again. He says, as surely as the Lord your God lives, I don't have any bread. I've got nothing. Only a handful of flour in a jar and a little olive oil in a jug. I'm gathering a few sticks to take home, make meal for myself and my son, that we may eat it and die. Elijah says, do not be afraid. Go home and do as you have said. But first make me a small loaf of bread from what you have and bring it to me. And then make something for yourself and your son. For this is what the Lord God of Israel says. The jar of flour will not be used up, and the jug of oil will not run dry until the day the Lord sends out rain on the land. She went away and did as Elijah had told her. So there was food in every day for Elijah and the woman and her family. The jar of flour was not used up, and the jug of oil did not run dry, in keeping with the word spoken by Elijah. There's an old story about a man traveling through a desert. And he needs water, and he comes across this pump, an old manual pump. And with it, there's a jug of water. And there's a sign that says, if you want to use the pump, you're going to need to put this jug of water in it to prime the pump. And this man traveling through the desert, he's got a life and death situation. What do you do with the last? There's a jug of water sitting right there. You're certain to survive if you have that. But you've scummed everybody else behind you, right? If you use it, because that pump's not going to prime. But do you know that the pump's going to prime? What if that pump's so old that you put the jug of water in there and nothing happens? You've got to prime the pump. Prime that pump, you're just going to keep on getting water and water and water, and everybody's going to be happy. Then you can put that jug back full again and leave the sign for the next person. Kindness is the same way. This is the very same story. You got to prime the pump. You want some kindness, you got to give it out first. You've got to give it out first. It's this counterintuitive solution that we find all the time throughout the Word. If you're hungry, feed somebody else first, then you'll be fine. What? Huh? That doesn't make any sense. Yeah, you got to prime the pump. You got to use what you've got to get that pump going. It may seem like putting somebody else first would be the illogical thing to do. You should put yourself first. I should drink that water sitting right there. But it doesn't work that way. The truth is, it's priming the pump. It's doing it for somebody else first. Because that's what you're doing when you prime that pump. You're thinking of somebody else. Because you're covered. The jug is right there. You're covered. No, I got to think of somebody else first. Got to prime that pump. Boy, I sure hope this pump works. I sure hope this pump works. It's tough, but that's what the logic of spirituality is. So it may seem like the most unlikely time for you to think of somebody else first, when you're experiencing despair, when you're feeling down, when you feel like it ain't working out for you, when you don't know what's going to happen. But these are the really important decisions that are fundamental in being the catalyst for change in your life. You know? Spiritual food multiplies when you give it away. It happened just like Elijah said. She believed him. She did what he said. His words came true. In the physical world, this of course wouldn't happen, right? Things are consumed. But miracles don't operate to natural principles, but to spiritual ones. What Swedenborg writes about with miracles, he says, what happens is, he says, such things as actually exist in the spiritual world are introduced into such things into the natural world as correspond. So if bread corresponds to love and goodness, what he's saying is that the spiritual properties of love and goodness are introduced into the bread, and therefore the bread takes on the properties of the spiritual thing that it's connected to. That's what's happening in miracles. And that's what happened in this story. Physical food behaved like spiritual food. It didn't decrease as it was used up. The flour and oil should have run dry, but they didn't. Because why? Because you can't consume love and make it go away. That's how miracles work. So instead of feeding herself and her son the last meal, she gave some to Elijah. And it never ran out. So the message here, of course, is that when you put the Lord first, it may seem that your satisfaction will decrease. But the truth is, it'll increase. It may seem that following the commandments and loving others more than we love ourselves isn't the right idea. Because I'm trying to survive. Right? This widow is trying to survive. So it may seem like taking care of somebody else isn't the right thing to do. It seems it's going to detract from our happiness when we're looking out for somebody else. So the hard thing for us is just like it is for this widow, is believing that it's really, really true. Acting on this belief. And let go of the idea of serving ourselves and trusting that it's the Lord that's going to be bringing us satisfaction. These are our first steps in living a courageous life. Believing that somebody else, serving somebody else, is going to make us happy when we're the ones feeling like we need salvation. Amen.